Ready to go. All right, good evening. This is the City of Sunbury Services Committee meeting for April 2nd, 2025. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Capel?
Here.
Mayor St. John?
Here.
Ms. Strayer? Here. Mr. Grumney?
Here.
We're present. We have quorum.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our March 5th meeting. Can I get a second? Second. Second by Mr. Grumney. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mr. Grumney?
Yes.
Mayor St. John?
Yes.
Ms. Strayer? Yes. 4 yeas, motion passes.
Any visitors that would like to speak to the committee tonight? And we're off to business then. Cheshire Lift Station is first up on our agenda.
All right, so this item is something that will also be have a first reading at council tonight for the recommended award of the construction contract. The bid opening was on March 12th, and we had 2 contractors submit bids. Ryder Company submitted a bid for $383,000. And Unlimited Core Solutions submitted a bid of $473,000. The engineer's estimate was $395,000. So the Ryder Company was the low bid. We did get a recommended letter of award from Verdantis for the Ryder Company. Their bid, the bid tallies have been done, and we are good to go. As a reminder for the Cheshire Lift Station, this is going to involve the replacement of the dual submersible pumps. It won't be like a replacement of the manhole itself, and then the electrical components as well. It's necessary in order to temporarily serve the Kittner Crossing and Kittner commercial developments before they can connect to the anticipated Little Walnut Creek Interceptor gravity sewer improvements.
So if this is on council agenda tonight, is there anything that we need to take action on right now, or is this just FYI for the preview?
Yeah, this is just make sure they're comfortable. If you've got questions about the bid process, now would be a good time to ask them. Another thing to maybe add to this is the cost of this will be covered by the developer who is developing the residential portion of the Kittner Crossing project. So in the development agreement, which we would not yet approve through council, but negotiating with the developer, there was a placeholder in there for about $400,000. But their costs will actually be a little bit higher than that because we'll add in the design fee and the inspection costs as well. So we'll see that a little bit later, but I think an important point to note that this is not a city expense when all is said and done.
Did they have any say in the selection process or anything along those lines then, or is that was just all the city choosing? Okay.
Yep. It was all designed by our consultant Verdantis in order to make sure that we could handle the capacity needs that they have.
There's a fair bit of difference between the 2 bids, and since the bid the low bid comes in near the probable cost, it makes sense. But I know that one of the, maybe it was the wastewater plant or maybe it was one of the other projects, had another high disparity in its bids. I'm just curious if there's any, do we see why that's happening? Is there lack of clarity in the bid packages that's causing that? Just wondered if there was any noticeable
line by line, looking at it. So I saw the labor costs and the material costs, and it looked like the high bid for Unlimited Core Solutions had some much higher material costs anticipated, but that is something that contractors can actually kind of put into their paperwork a certain way. So it can be very difficult to tell why it is one way or the other. We didn't have too many questions through the bid process for this, so I believe that the plans were clear.
Okay.
Yeah, you might be remembering, well, certainly the wastewater treatment plant, we had a wide disparity. On the parkway or the parking lot, we just had one bid, it was substantially higher than the estimate as well. I don't know. I guess I would say that I think it's probably the market on some level. But that's pure guess, I think, on our part, because really don't have
Yeah.
that kind of a debrief with the bidders afterwards.
Sense. Any other questions on this? All right, we can move on to stormwater.
All right, so I do have a visitor in the audience, Mr. Scott Stevens, so he's going to assist in this update for the Delaware County Soil and Water Conservation District. I wanted to start a little bit with the current relationship that the city has with the Conservation District. And I did bring a visual because, you know, I know stormwater can not always be the most fun topic,
Right.
but we know.
That's why I'm here. It's for stormwater.
No offense, Scott. But if you look at the graphic, essentially, one of the services that we partner with the Conservation District on is in order to meet the city's minimum control measures. And that has to do with the city meeting our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System requirements. So as a city, we have these stormwater requirements that annually we need to report back to the Environmental Protection Agency. And these are the 6 categories. The Conservation District has been supporting the city with numbers 1, 2, and 6. So public education, public involvement and participation, and our good housekeeping, they call it, the pollution prevention practices. So for numbers 1 and 2, I know we talked in the parks meeting about the derby that's going to happen, the fishing derby. So one of the things that we're talking about doing in the future is public involvement and having the Conservation District there to assist, but also to talk about the importance of water quality and kind of do that public education and outreach. And then that's something that from a number of participants at the event occurs, we go ahead and report that back to the EPA. And we look for events in order to meet as much of our public as possible. So that's just an example of one of the things that's done. They also do social media posts and blast it out. We share it with our communications manager.
Sure.
Yes, we share with Amber, and Amber goes ahead and blasts it out on our social media so that we can share important information that we'd like the community to be aware of, such as when Stormwater Awareness Week is in October. And then item 6 is an annual overview that we do in-house to talk about the best practices within the city for our municipality. That's something we go over with our operations team. So think about Public Works, talking about how they're disposing of chemicals and just good housekeeping practices around our facilities. So again, we already have this relationship, items 1, 2, and 6, with the stormwater legislation that just came through council and was approved in late January. We are going to have this third-party inspection come up. And if you look at MCM, or minimum control measure number 4, construction site runoff controls, there's a requirement to inspect these sites annually. And if you remember before the legislation, a third party hired by the developer was inspecting the sites. At this point, we're looking to have a partnership and have our own third-party inspection. One of the reasons we love the idea of working with Delaware County is, of course, they are nonprofit. This is what they do day in and day out. So this is something that we feel, and in talking to the community, they feel Delaware County Conservation District is going to be really well suited to offer this service. With that, we don't have an official contract here for you today, but at the next services meeting, I am planning on bringing at least a draft so that we can start working through this process and get an annual contract in place with some of the anticipated factors. With that, because we have these fees coming through the stormwater legislation, a good amount of that contract is anticipated to be covered through those fees.
Mm.
But with that, I wanted to give Scott a few minutes to introduce himself and maybe give a little bit of background on the Conservation District.
So thank you. Scott Stevens, I'm the administrator at the Soil and Water Conservation District. And how many of you are familiar with the conservation districts? There's 88 districts in the state, one in each county. I can give you a little background. We're actually a political subdivision of the state of Ohio. The Delaware SWCD would have been formed in 1942. It was to bring boots on the ground, just better outreach, farming practices. Really, it was an agricultural based organization. Obviously, Delaware County's, while we have a thriving agricultural community, we also have a thriving urban suburban community. So we've you kind of reinvent yourself or change over the years to be responsive to the local needs, communities. We do work with townships. We support the county engineer, county commissioners, and similar type endeavors. So it's a natural partnership for the mission of conservation districts to partner with local communities. And the NPDS, there's probably 28 or so districts of the 88 that have this similar type relationship with numerous municipalities within the county. We support Powell, Shawnee Hills, Galena, and obviously the county's NPDS permit as well. So look forward to it. So I think fire away if you've got questions. Where we are, where we're headed, be happy to.
We had mentioned the construction stormwater management. That kind of seems like a lot of hours for Delaware County. I think it's a great idea that we could.
Yeah, absolutely. So the county's NPDS permit is managed through the county engineer's office, Chris Bauserman's office, as part of their stormwater construction. We support them on the front end of that. But our larger role there is on the post-construction. The county has our drainage management program. So there's actually county-led maintenance of the stormwater infrastructure. So all the development in the unincorporated part of the county, all the catch basins, manholes, retention ponds, surface drainage, and we have a crew at the district that goes out and looks at those on an annual basis, schedules maintenance work. We do quite a little bit in-house, but we also contract that out. So that would be more MCM5, the post-construction. That's the one that never goes away. MCM4, that gets a lot of talk. It can be kind of messy work building a couple hundred houses in the middle of a field, but that goes away at some point. The site's stabilized and it becomes a community. And then it's how we manage that infrastructure is really what is kind of where the rubber really starts to meet the road. So yeah, that's all part of the conversation moving forward.
What role do you play in the handoff from let's say active construction zone to then its public infrastructure, like the storm drain system in particular? Is there a post-construction call it inspection or something that you're involved in?
So there is an obligation to that by the community, and I don't know, Carl, maybe you'd be better suited to what that relationship is between construction and post-construction.
Yep. So as part of this future agreement, that is something that we are hoping to include in essentially the stormwater closeout part of it. But there is a requirement per the SWIP, that Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, to essentially close out their agreement with the EPA, which it's called a NOE. So getting into a little bit of acronym, a lot of acronyms. I know. I'm sorry about it. But essentially, you're required to tell the EPA that essentially you're done disturbing the land, and there are checklists on that. And that's something that historically we've worked with Verdantis on, and we have some projects now that we are looking at possibly, turning over. We're working on that final punch list, for example, Rolling Hills. But essentially that punch list is going to include things like looking at the sediment pond to make sure that it meets all the requirements for their capacity for just stormwater storage. So essentially we need to see how much sediment is at the bottom. We need to make sure all the skimmers are off, or anything that is controlling the stormwater in a way for the erosion and the construction, and actually turning it into something that functions from just a regular rain event.
That's exactly where I was going with this. Like, there is a point in the process that we or an agent of the city is checking detention ponds to make sure that if it was designed to hold X amount of water, it's still gonna hold X amount of water, or, I mean, there's gonna be some remediation that we require, like dredging or something. Is that right?
Yes, and that's something that we hold to the developer to make sure that it is meeting that standard before it is turned over to whoever has the long-term maintenance. Oftentimes an HOA will hand that over to, or occasionally the city may own the stormwater, just depending upon where it is.
We own the drain system, the city, but the ponds and the maintenance of the ponds, that, at least historically for us, like Sunbury Meadows, communities at Sunbury, Rolling Hills, Price Ponds, Magnolia Park, those get transitioned to the HOA.
Yes, and then in every SWIP document, it has a recommended cycle for what the future HOA should be doing to maintain that stormwater infrastructure. So when he talks about that 5 that keeps you busy, that post-construction, there's a lot of reporting, and we haven't, the city of Sudbury hasn't been reporting to the EPA for these requirements for that long. We're to the point where they are mandating that we report a certain frequency. So we haven't had any direction from the EPA that, you know, we need annual inspection of every post-construction stormwater management system, but eventually we could get there. So having this partnership with the Conservation District to make sure that we are doing what is necessary for the EPA is I think a really good partnership and just a good relationship in order to make sure we stay compliant.
Just, you know, long term, I would say just the functionality of that stormwater system as the years go by, that's it's a public utility, you know, basically, and that a healthy, happy, thriving community, a good stormwater management. We've got 3 or 4 rough days coming here. If you look at the weather forecast, those are the times you find out how good are we at that maintenance, the flood routes and keeping those open. They're not fences, you know, landscaping ends up in those things, and it's that's the aspect of stormwater management that just it truly never ends. You're just waiting on the next rainfall, right? How do we do? Yeah.
Yeah, so, and if I could add maybe a couple of other points. One is, so Carla had alluded to a document that we're going to bring to council for consideration. You may remember every other year, roughly, we have been entering into an agreement for 1, 2, and 6. So this is really an amendment to our existing agreement with the Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District. The other thing I would say is that, Scott and his team have been helpful to us. I mean, if sort of back a few years ago, they helped us at least try to map the city's existing wastewater or sanitary stormwater system. We did have an intern a couple of years ago try to go out and field test or truth test, you know, is the system, at least on our GIS, is it really kind of what they helped us do several years ago? You know, we found a lot of minor adjustments, but for the most part, I mean, it tracked pretty well. But maybe one other point is, so back to Grant Colson, when Grant was here, after he finished up the intern, after he finished up the sidewalk assessment, we sent him out as well to look at the outfalls, to try to find the outfalls associated with our wastewater system or sanitary, or I keep saying that, stormwater system. But again, another thing that's a part of the annual reporting process that we're supposed to do with the IEPA. And so little by little, we are, you know, sort of tackling these issues that they would want us to be tackling, but also really are in our best interests long term anyway. The final thing I will say is that with the help of Verdantis and the Delaware Soil and Water Conservation, last year for the first time, we had a significant training opportunity with our operations team to go over those best practices. We talked about doing it. We never really got to that point, but with the help of those 2 organizations and Jake, we were able to do that. And I think we invited the Galena group as well. So yeah, I was going to say, I think we may have had the Galena service team here as well. So
Very good.
a lot of other good things are coming out of this relationship with Delaware Soil and Water. And then maybe one final point is, I know Jake has been in contact with the organization about getting access to camera work. You guys help camera stormwater systems and can help us detect problems. And I know we've used that service a few times before we had our own camera. So we'll still continue to use that. That'll probably be a part of the contract going
Hydro
forward.
seeder, we have quite a bit of equipment that we
Oh, a
use.
hydro seeder.
Yeah, we can put down. It's pretty efficient. It's a lot better than shaking straw, I tell you.
Right?
Yeah, it works good. It works well. It's definitely.
That was what
The hour.
Marie used to talk about all the time. It's like they hydro seeded. I'm like, I don't even know what that is, but okay, now it's.
That's perfect. Yeah,
And we're keeping it local.
that's
How
right.
great is
That's
that?
right. Yeah, it's good. That intergovernmental
Yeah,
relationship. There's some
right.
purchasing power and just, the community of folks that are doing this type of work. We're all in the same area.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like I said, it's looking forward to a great partnership for the district.
Win-win.
Good.
And you're our neighbor. You live in Galena.
I do live in Galena, almost in Sunbury.
Almost. Couple streets
Really,
away.
really close. Yeah. Yeah, very good.
You almost
Perfect.
made it. Almost made it this time.
So close. Yeah. Yeah. I lived in the Sunbury zip code at that.
Okay.
That's how that counts.
This time.
Not to add any confusion to that, right?
Yeah.
That never comes
Right.
up. Very good. We'll look forward to it and don't hesitate. I'll leave cards for everybody and don't hesitate to reach out if you're reading through this whole stuff or an acronym comes up and it's like, what am I reading? Give me a call.
First time I ever heard NPEDS or whatever it is
You
explained.
knew
I
it.
never knew what that was.
Yeah. Yeah, SWIP, that's the one, that's the big one.
That's the big
one you need to know. That's right. If you get that one,
Stormwater
you got it.
prevention, pollution.
Pollution prevention plan.
There we go.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, and we are on next to signal modernization, and I do believe this is Bob, unless you need to lead in, Daryl or
Well,
Carla.
I'll just do a little bit of an introduction and hopefully most people know Bob. If not, Bob will introduce himself. Talk a little bit about signal modernization. We've talked a little bit about that, I think, from the services team from time to time. The idea here is really just kind of introduce you to some kind of where we are today, what the future could look like, and really begin to set the stage maybe for putting some of this in our future capital budget. So don't anticipate an action tonight, but certainly anticipate some questions.
So, do you mind if I give an intro too? And this is not to steal any of your thunder, Bob, but I think it's really important for us to do every single thing we possibly can before we expand additional roadways. And this is one tool or strategy that we can employ that will allow traffic to move more safely and more effortlessly before we have to add a turn lane, add lanes, bulldoze things. Was that your punchline?
That was it. It's hard to follow SWIPs and PDS permits. This is better saying. So I'm Bob Keaterly. I'm with Verdantis. I know most of you. I'm around here quite a bit. This is something we've been working on in our traffic working group with the engineering folks, the operations folks, and we've looked at it a couple times recently. So thanks, Daryl and Carla, everybody, for bringing this to the forefront a little bit. So to start out with where we are now, pretty simply, we don't have a lot of signals, and most of them have been there for quite a while. So we have our 3 signals here on the square. We have these 4 white ones are the Miller Drive. We've got this ODOT signal at 61. We're down here at Sunbury Meadows, and then we have the blue one at Kintner. There's some red ones that maybe are future ones brewing. But that's where we are on the map right now. So about the equipment we have, most of it is 20 years old, maybe a little older. It was pretty typical of the time when it was put in. It's pretty typical to what's out in the world now. It's not like this stuff is really 1985, but it's shown its age. A couple of the things about the equipment, communications is a thing that has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. So our signals, the 4 in the Miller Drive area, they connect to each other using a radio, point to point. And this was kind of my sarcastic slide I made up. It's 12 times faster than the modems we had when we were in high school. So it's pathetically slow, right? And so like our 40 megabit cell phone connection, 300 times faster than what this. So they're not pushing a lot of data. They're pushing basic information. One of the pieces of information that's critical is clock timing. So here on the square, we've got 4 signals, 3 signals, they're interconnected with radio. One of them has a GPS antenna that talks to the sky and knows the time. It tells the other two what time it is. And they're sequenced to step traffic through, right? So if those clocks aren't talking, those clocks will drift and the whole sequencing falls apart. So I've opened Sunbury cabinets and found controllers that are just offline. And what we know is that clock's going to drift. So that's the thing. When you're looking at those skinny ones, those are the masters. These pokey ones are the other ones. Vehicle detection, pretty simple, right? We've got loop detectors in the ground. Modern times, we still put them in, not as much as we used to. They work. They're a little more maintenance. These things that you see up on the poles are radar. That's kind of standard everywhere. This is what ODOT uses. We have a bunch of these. Very reliable. Don't care about the weather. Good stuff. Here on the square, we have nothing. So if you look at one of these poles, you'll notice there's no push buttons for pedestrians because these things are completely pre-timed. They just go around. And when you show up at 11 o'clock at night and you're the only vehicle, you're going to wait till it goes around because there's no detection to tell it, I'm here, give me a green, because there's no competition for the green. So up on the square, we have no detection. We're going through our safety action plan now. We did a bunch of public engagement, and there's a huge correlation between congestion and crashes. So when we look at some of the data, 36% of the crashes are at signals. It's very intuitive, but what we know is when we get more congestion, we have more people doing risky behaviors, we get more crashes. This is a map that bears out some of the same information. The reds are our fatals. Just keeping that in front of everybody. Those are the ones that really going to keep us up at night. So what are we talking about for modernization? What we're talking about is upgrading the electronics in the box, the brain, and the communications outward. We're also talking about upgrading the sensors to know when pedestrians are there, the vehicles are there. And in a modern there we go. So in a modern system, we've got controllers in the field that have sensors. They're connected to the internet that goes to somewhere in the office. And when we have that, we get a lot of benefits. We can control what's going on in the field. We can see what's going on in the field because typically you're going to install some cameras where you can observe what's happening and also have fault detection. So if equipment goes offline, somebody gets a notification on their cell phone and can fix it. Right now, something goes offline. We might notice it after months when somebody says it's not working the way it used to. So a modern system controlled from the office can see it and can adapt. So really the benefits is incident response. So when something weird happens, fire and EMS have integration into this. When, for example, Interstate 71 closes for a wreck and traffic is running through Sunbury, we could take measures to push that traffic through, right? Dynamic traffic adjustments. If there's a football game or there's something going on, fireworks is a typical thing that a lot of communities will just control their situation with fireworks traffic by modifying what's going on. Talked about incidents, failure notifications, that's a biggie, and oversight to make sure things are always adapting to what's going on. We mentioned that you're going to see the term adaptive soon or now in the future. That's the next level, and adaptive systems. Most of what we're talking about is humans are putting together timing plans that are going out in the field and we're selecting which ones to use. Adaptive says the computer figures out what to do. And in the world that we're in now, that's where we're headed. And the hardware that's available does this, and we've got it in communities in Ohio. So adaptive is kind of the Zen level of what we're talking about. So where to get started? So this is interesting and is a little squishy. If we said right now, okay, we want to go do it, and we got a grant for tons of money. Very first step is going through a process with the internal city operations folks, probably services committee, and we're going to have to choose a technology platform because there's competing products with pros and cons and costs, and it's changing super fast. So first thing that needs to happen is select a platform so that when new signals come with development or we start to roll it out, we know and we can make a replication of something that we've pre-chosen and we're not reacting to. It's something to think about. Once we know what the platform looks like, there's different ways to phase it in. You can spend a ton of money and do it all at once. You could phase in by intersection. So you could say the priority is Miller Drive area and really upgrade all of those. You could do the same with the square. You could phase in by feature. So you could say, step one, we want to get all our signals online so we can see what's going on. And then we can phase in fancy detection, phase in surveillance cameras, things later. And you know, that's kind of a planning process that we need to go through. I think adaptive comes in later. You kind of get it all working first, and then you phase in the adaptive. And Carl's going to talk about citywide fiber providers, lots of opportunities. So this equipment really, it wants to, just like your house, it wants to have its own fiber drop, but that's not always possible. So how do we bring them online? We can hook them up to a Spectrum drop. The simplest, quickest way to get them online is a cell modem in each cabinet. Pretty cost effective, not super high bandwidth, but as we start to experience fiber coming past our intersections, running the fiber from place to place is expensive. Connecting it, not so expensive. So I think we're going to see that pick up, and over time, you know, maybe we have half of it on fiber, half of it on cell, and then they roll on over time. So I think that's exciting. Huge piece of expense. If we can take that out of the picture and focus on the hardware and the software, then that really helps. We're at 9 minutes. Oh, it's at 10 that I was allotted. So
Nailed it.
we have 1 minute of question time.
Silence here.
Less.
Good work.
Some questions, guys. That was a 45-minute presentation at 9.
Bob.
Does this use AI?
Yes. If you define AI as machine learning, yeah. I mean, the way that camera filters find vehicles and humans, it's machine learning. It's trained against a data set. Yeah.
The ultimate goal would be to get these lights to talk to each other, to move traffic through our area way more smoothly, especially on holidays or busy days, homecoming or parades or fireworks, and through, so it would learn. It would, the brains, these new brains would learn these patterns. Is that right?
Yeah, it will learn. Yeah. So yeah, step one, get them all connected, get them communicating. And then that's the Zen level, is let it learn from itself. And it'll, you know, after it goes through 5 football games, it'll know what a football game looks like, right? Because those patterns are pretty predictable.
But what happens if the electric goes out?
Well, today the lights just flash.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that's what happens. We call Jake and then say, Jake, go get a generator, run out there. I mean, I don't know that solves this if the power
no, I
goes
mean,
out.
and you get battery backup systems on some of them.
Some of them we do.
Molly, you know, all the power goes out, we got other problems too.
Right. That's police officers on the streets and stuff.
Yep.
I have a question. So technology is awesome. It improves, but it seems like a lot of times you put money into something that's obsolete. 2 years. So is a solution like this, is it scalable? Is it updatable? Is it something that you just add new pieces to? Or is it like, okay, this is good for 5 years, now something better's come along and you gotta rip that out and put, or is this something that we see growing with us and just adding the pieces to it?
Yeah, so the systems that we would put in now are, they're little powerful Linux computers in a box, right? So they're new software, new sensors, very adaptable. The problem with the older stuff is they don't have Ethernet ports. They don't have, most of them have RS-232 serial jacks. So the really old stuff, yeah, that's left behind. The things that are going in modern systems are upgradable, adaptable, very modular, so that you don't get stuck with a huge replacement. You will in 30 years,
Right.
but not in
Right.
the short term.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then my very serious question is, do those buttons on the pedestrian cross really work? Cause I sometimes cross Sunbury, walk Sunbury Meadows across Route 3 and I'll hit that button and I wait, I swear I wait just as long as if I had not hit the button.
Waiting factor.
Yeah, I just feel like it's going through the regular cycle, it's just making me mentally feel better.
Better because a lot of right. So you
Bunch, it does not work.
Do they go out of sync? I mean, can they stop working? Cause really, I stand there and it's like, this is no faster than,
they can fail.
yeah.
Most of the things like the push buttons and the loop, they fail safe. So what will happen is if a detector fails, there's always a call. So if you see, there's always a left air arrow and there's never any cars. Usually this stuff fails safe. But your thing on something like crossing Route 3 is the main arterial and it gets all the time. And if you get there at the wrong time, you call it, you just have to wait for it to come back around you.
That's the way we designed it, really. I mean, it's like the priority is moving traffic on
Mhm.
Route 3,
I don't
right?
accept that. I'm the problem.
And John, one of the things that I think is fantastic is when we get more interactive with this,
Yeah.
we can go to more and more granular timing plans. So at 9 o'clock at night, we don't need to make that one call wait forever.
Mhm.
Or here on the square, oh my gosh, now you don't even push the button.
Mhm.
One other thing is I think just on the data capture side of things as well. I mean, especially when we go to camera-based, detection. Right now, we're sending drones up in the sky and having people on the ground standing and watching how many cars are going by at what times. And you could use 4 or 5 people for an hour in the morning, but that's all you're capturing is like the morning. Ultimately, I think, Bob, what you're saying is, especially when we get to adaptive, I mean, the system does the work for us and optimizes the entire network, not just one signal, which we're really focused on, like the McDonald's, Wendy's, Miller, Cherry signal right now because of the school traffic. But, that's just plugging one hole and,
Yeah, and it's a hard trade-off because the engineers are gonna wanna optimize the whole thing for least delay on the whole city.
Right.
And, the drivers are gonna want the one that I really go through a lot.
Right.
Prioritize, so,
of course.
yeah, it's interesting.
I think the data collection will be helpful because we get feedback saying that, this is going to add so much traffic if we do this or we do that. And does that really come to fruition? Is that true? Or is that just what, a perception?
And that's a total byproduct because
Yeah.
these modern sensors that you put in there, the really modern ones have camera and radar in the same unit that shoot 900 feet. They count for you, you get all that as a byproduct.
So could they gather how many cars run a red light in a given frame
Yeah.
of time as well?
Yeah, and the modern radar
Detector
stuff
for the police.
will count pedestrians
Yeah.
and bicycles and differentiate
That's
between
great.
the two. It's amazing what we're getting now.
Is our equipment set up for it, or would we have to get new
We're gonna
equipment?
need a lot of new equipment,
About $700,000.
about 700,000.
If we want to do it all at once and use cell phone technology to do it.
And frankly, most cities that are, even well-to-do cities are gonna face things and, one of our clients, the city of Blue Ash, they're down near Cincinnati. They have all the money and, they add a thing here, add a thing there, tweak it here, tweak it there. So it doesn't need to be a big lump. those initial implementation pieces though are important.
Did I hear this, or maybe I'm making it up, but is there opportunities for grants and things like that to help fund, like in public safety, that we can apply for to help pay for this? And, okay.
Yeah, so part of the longer presentation did have some funding scenarios, options for us to pursue. But for the purposes of tonight, I just wanted to kind of introduce
Yeah.
what the capabilities might be. So as Bob had indicated, I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of, getting a real plan in front of you. I think we're just trying to take the temperature a little bit, and I think what I'm hearing is generally pretty supportive of the notion of moving forward with this. So we can refine that a little bit more and certainly come back with more information. Were you going to add one other item?
I was just going to point out that we are actively looking for grants for this type of application. And we did find one that we applied for, but there's been a delay on that grant application. So we were a little worried that there was an issue with it. But
Government
so-
seems to be a little disheveled right
Yeah.
now. or very-
the whole grant site shut down. Maybe we weren't the only ones looking for the money, but we are doing our best to try and get our hands on it so that we can build out our capital program.
Yeah, and that would have gotten us started. It wouldn't have done the entire program. So
Bring me back anytime you want to talk about it. I love it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, on to Otis Street parking.
I was
Do
gonna
we
say,
have
why don't we jump to fiber just so we can kind of wrap up this piece,
Oh, yeah,
and then we'll go back to Otis.
Yeah.
fiber it is then?
Bob kind of pitched up a quick little fiber note
He
at the
did.
end. So one of the things, it's my understanding you guys have already had the 6 or 7 page guideline update. So we won't be going through line by line all of the guidelines. Yay.
So it's in your packet page 35. Just a reminder, this is back in February of last year, we showed this as a draft set of guidelines that we've been sharing with providers as they've come forward. It's not the definitive word, but it is a lot of what we're looking for. But as a result of that, I think we've learned some lessons in the near term, and that's what I think Carla wants to.
Yeah. So I'll kind of go off of what Bob had mentioned, just in the grand scheme of things when it comes to this fiber network, we are trying to make very specific and thoughtful ideas about what we want to do with our fiber network, especially when it comes to the corridors that Bob pointed out, as far as where our signals are, where we have a lot of traffic, impacts, and having people put multiple conduits or multiple overhead wires in certain locations. That's something we want to maybe be thoughtful about and try to limit the impacts to the community. Just like around the square, we don't necessarily want provider after provider coming in and putting in multiple conduits. We want to maybe create a duct system. So that was something that Bob kind of mentioned. There are other implications that the city can look at and potentially utilize for our in-house services, such as the signal optimization or other improvements.
So, and maybe just a little bit more on that. So I think it was at the last meeting I talked about a discussion we're having with one of the fiber providers to have city-owned conduit installed at the same time. If we agree to their installation for their conduit, they're doing city-owned conduit at the same time. It would run down this corridor, 36, 37, and around at least a portion of the square. So it would actually pick up quite a bit of what Bob had alluded to. I mean, it may need to have a little bit of adjustment to pick up the lights further down the square on this side. But yeah, I mean, all of this, when Carlos says, we're trying to be thoughtful about this, we are also consulting with our advisor, the deep fiber strategies. They've been helping us with this as well. So we've been talking through this as a way to kind of make sure that, the city is going to benefit long-term from these fiber investments. And again, one of our goals, I think, is to create a system that, maybe becomes, a resource for the city longer term in terms of, leasing out to future users, that kind of thing. So I guess the bottom line is these two would line up very nicely if we can make both of them happen and get that ductwork in place. I think that would go a long way toward getting us teed up for for the improvements along 36, 37 that Bob's been referencing. So we're not all the way there yet, but we're still working through it. There you
Right. So lessons learned from the fiber applications that are starting to come in. And these large scale right-of-way applications, which is the format that they're submitting them in, are essentially looking at some of our larger development communities. And they're trying to place either overhead if there's existing poles, or directionally boring and placing fiber options in the communities. So again, 7-8 pages of guidelines, but with that, we've also been able to identify, as we've started to review these plans, maybe some items that we want to have the applicant consider on the front end. One of which is looking at all the potential easements and locations that they could install the fiber network. For example, there are many neighborhoods that have communication easements in the rear yard. So if they are available to put them in the rear yard, that is part of the investigation that we want the provider to look at, so that we keep communications where they're at and perhaps maybe stay out of the city's right of way. Occasionally, there's also a utility easement adjacent to the city's right of way, which is typically the street. And that would be another location that we would consider, but we want to have that front end conversation with where the best overall plan is, and also look for locations that it's going to have the fewest impacts on the residents that are living there. We've asked for aerial mapping. Right now, it's just they're submitting lines on the plans. It's really difficult to see exactly where they're putting their handholds. So those little boxes that go into the ground based on where the property lines are. So we've asked them for some additional mapping requirements as well.
Yeah, so at the moment, there are 2 active providers with right-of-way requests in that we're working with. So, and I think the default is to look to the right-of-way, and that's why I think we're at least encouraging them to look at the other easements as well.
So with these guidelines and this additional information that we're looking at with the 2 providers that are in, we're trying to be consistent in how we're responding to what's coming in. And it'll also be a roadmap for us as we move forward with even other projects, not necessarily fiber. If Columbia Gas comes in and has a project, we can kind of follow these guidelines and how we want to have information submitted to the city for large impact areas.
Is that new, the flush marker, or am I like that so happy?
It's not new. It was actually in the earlier draft, but it was in the earlier draft, I think, because Mr. White had heard your comments.
Mr. White, yeah, yes. So I did see that on the back. I know you had asked about it at council at the last meeting. And excuse me?
Zoning.
Oh, sorry, at zoning.
Yeah.
So I also sent an email to all the Central Ohio Engineers Group. So I haven't received feedback because in addition to the flat markers, they also have some low impact ones as well. So I was looking to see what code and legislation other communities have. So hopefully we can bring that and start including it, and maybe not have those 4-foot markers.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Are you trying to get everything underground though? These new lines?
So it depends on the applicant and what they approach us with. One of the providers seems to only want to put everything directionally bored in the ground. But if there are existing poles and they just need to replace their fiber, one of the other applicants in certain areas is wanting to put in the underground, but also replace their overhead in order to provide the service to their existing customers.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right.
Otis Street
Otis Street
parking
park.
or no parking?
I like it. If you turn to packet page 28, you'll see there's a memo in your packet. Alyssa has done some research on parking on Otis Street. So this issue came up a couple of months ago, and I said we would send our team out to gather some data. So what she's included in the summary here is basically on the first page there, it lists the issues raised by the resident requesting city consideration to add Otis Street to our list of no parking. The next few pages show about, I think it's about 6 weeks worth of images, not every day, but just show you some images of what's happening on the street and some parking that's occurring. Most of the vehicles are kind of repeating themselves, so it's not a lot of different particular users, but what you can see is that, you know, when they are parked on the street, it does significantly restrict access for individuals who might be walking down the street. The other thing that I then want to note is, so on packet page 32, Alyssa had looked into, you know, where using Grant Colson's sidewalk assessment, looked into, you know, where sidewalks exist or do not exist in this area. And so long and short story, basically on packet page 32, the area between the two yellow dashes, basically that entire roadway there does not have any sidewalk whatsoever. The roadway width is about 20 feet, so you got 10-foot drive lanes. When somebody is parked on the street, like you said, from the images you can see, it significantly restricts the flow of traffic in that area and is a hazard for anybody who might be trying to access the park, a city park. We did then also research every other city park to see, you know, where the similar kind of characteristics in place. A narrow street, no sidewalks. And if those were the case, we ought to probably be looking at those as no parking options as well. What we discovered is that the only other place where that set of criteria matches exactly is the Evening Street area. But you can get to the Evening Street Park on both Granville and Cherry Street via a sidewalk. But once you get down to Evening Street, there's no access, but it's already on our list of parks, or it's already on our list of streets where no parking is the norm. So what staff are recommending then, and the police department agrees with this, is that we would recommend that we, from Harrison to Sedgwick, because it is an access point to a city park without sidewalks, recommend that be a no parking zone as well. The area to the south that leads to J.R. Smith Park, most of it has a sidewalk, at least on one side. There is a small gap, which we should research if we can fill that gap in some way moving forward. And if not, maybe we come back to you at that point. But so that would be our recommendation. And if you're comfortable with that, I've included in the packet on packet page 33, a list of all the other streets that currently have no parking, just in case you have any questions on that. If we're okay with this, we'll put the paperwork together and bring it in front of the city council and provide for a modification of the ordinance. So questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree too. I appreciate the work on this, and I appreciate the resident bringing up the concern too.
Yeah, I should add, every single property along that area does have off-street parking. So nobody is in a situation where they are parking on the street or that is their only option there. That's not the case. So, good. All right.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, we have 7 minutes, time for wastewater. upgrade.
No problem. This is a very
Okay.
quick update. I know in my engineer's report, I've mentioned a few times we were waiting on doing the absolute final signatures on the contract for Simonson, the construction contract for the expansion. That has been signed, sealed, delivered, and it is good to go. Again, it's 31.15 million for the expansion. With that, we can start scheduling a pre-construction meeting, and the contractor can begin to deliver can begin to order some of the long lead items.
Yep. So financing approved as well through the Ohio Water Development Authority. So,
Yep, that's what we were waiting on.
Yep.
Any questions?
Long time coming.
And then the 2025 street program, the final design for those streets is anticipated to be submitted to the city in mid-April. So by the end of the month, the plan is to bid the streets program out with the Columbus parking lot project in order to hopefully attract additional bidders. We're also planning on including a few of the best of the worst streets as an alternate so that we can look at the money that we have available and award if we get good pricing, and essentially leave it in services and council's hands as far as what we're able to do with the $1 million investment into the streets.
On a related point, so last year we had, I think for the first time, done crack sealing with our service team. So Jake and I and Caitlin have been talking about this as well. So we'll have a list of streets that will bring forward as well that'll get crack sealing this year. And the goal is to double the number of lane miles that we did last year. So we'll have that to supplement, what we're doing with the bid work.
We're targeting a bid opening sometime in mid-May. Is that right? Like,
Yeah,
That is right.
yes.
do you know what we had a bid opening of last year?
It was something like that. It was in May.
Thanks. I have one more item. for-
You see the secondary streets before a decision is made. If you don't do the primary streets, the secondary, will we be able to see that?
I can notify you guys what we're planning on bidding out so that you can see all the streets that are on the list and which streets have been identified to maybe put as an alternate.
Mayor said he had
I
something.
have one more item, just for perspective, and this goes back to the traffic signal modernization. Now, I know that $700,000 looks like a big amount. Think of it, anytime we can reduce or eliminate the need to expand our roadway network. I'll give you one example, and that is the turn lane that is in front of the fire department that was added like 3 years ago. That was around $330,000 at the time, or maybe 400. I mean, in today's dollars, that's a $450,000 turn lane. Any way we can avoid those, I think is a smart investment. That's it.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Strayer. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Capel.
Yes.